It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, everybody. It's about to go down. I am Marc Williams.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cathey Armillas, and we have with us Virginia Morris. So check this out. I met Virginia on a private island off the coast of Singapore in Indonesia, technically, on an island called Pangkil. And one of the first things I learned about Virginia is that she is like a brilliant idea creator, organism, an idea orchestrator, I would say. I would also maybe say she's an idea practitioner for sure. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But she's an idea implementer, Marc. And, we work with a lot of people and a lot of people have great ideas, but Virginia implements. And that's what we're going to chat today. I'm super excited, everybody watching, because what we're going to do is something unique and different that we've never done on a show before. We're going to talk to somebody who lives and breathes ideas, and she doesn't have one idea we're going to talk about today. We're just going to talk about the process of collating ideas and how do we come to good ideas and implement them. So Virginia, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. What a joy to be with you and Marc today. Thanks for the invitation and to have the chance to hang out with you guys.
Super excited. So I'm just going to ask you a quick question, Virginia. Thank you for being with us. Everybody's going to be like wowed when they hear kind of all the things that you put together, but give us a little background of kind of your relationship with ideas.
Oh, relationship to ideas. Well, interestingly, it might have started at birth, because when I think about it, at least when I could talk, because my parents have always joked that the first word that I learnt was why, as opposed to mum or dad, or milk or food or whatever, or dog or woof or whatever it is that most kids say. For me, it was why. So I ask a lot of questions. I am hugely curious. And through that process of asking questions and matching it with curiosity, I come up with loads of ideas all the time. So I think that's might be it, really. Starts with why.
Wow. Virginia, hold on. I got to ask you then. It starts with why. That was your first. I can't believe that was your first word. That's amazing.
I'm sure it's a joke. It would be pretty impressive if a baby could say why, but they clearly were indicating that that's what I did pretty early on.
Listen, my aunt, may she rest in peace, would say, we are now in a new generation of thinkers who that's all we do is ask why. So I'm already curious, like, what was the why question that opened up your latest idea?
The latest idea. Oh, the latest idea, like as in 5 minutes ago, or like the latest big idea? So
Her mom is always going.
Exactly.
Seriously. I mean, I have Thai massage every week, and the lady, bless her, says to me every day, your brain, you think too much. Like, just stop. Like, and she's like, I turn switch off for you, just 1 hour. So she's so sweet. Like, every time she's like, I just want to turn your brain off for an hour. I'm like, can you just do that? That would be so blissful for me to actually make that happen. So how did I come up with the latest idea? What was the why question, right, of coming up with this idea? Why does the world have to be the way it is probably the question, which sounds kind of big and, purposeful, but really it's not. It's kind of like, why does it work this way? Why doesn't it work this way? Right? Is quite often where I go when I come up with ideas. It's kind of like, I notice I'm a huge observer of things, and Cathey knows this, right? I observe people, I observe what people do, I look at the design and the behavior behind things. I'm naturally curious about how we interact. And so all of those things for me give loads of fodder for different ideas and stimulation for, what I want to do and what do I spend my energy on.
So Marc, if you don't already know this about Virginia, and I used to say this as a joke when I would be introducing Virginia to other people, but it really is not a joke. And she proved it to you earlier. It's like Virginia will be having a conversation with somebody like a client, or maybe even a friend. Like she might be having a conversation with me and a mutual friend of ours, Jimbo, and we'll just be having normal conversation. And Virginia will say something super like it's more than just like a statement. It's like a concept already. It's already like an idea just in the words that she's expressed. And then she's like, cool, I'm going to turn that into a button. I'm going to turn that into a shirt. I'm going to turn that into a website. I'm going to turn it into a program. And at some point it's going to be a blockbuster movie. Like that's just,
not yet.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah. But I'm telling you, when I'm not kidding in the fact that I say that like Virginia implements ideas. So there's a lot of people that I think pride themselves on being really good at being creative and thinking outside of the box and asking questions and being curious. And so, it's our moment to ask you, Virginia, like, how do you do that? How do you bridge between being like the creative, but then also like following that all the way through? Cause that's the hardest part of an idea.
Oh, no question, right? And, one of the hardest parts, as that you and I have talked about a lot, is which idea, right? So which is the one to actually take forward? And so I guess the key thing for me, I use my energy a lot. So, I could do a whole heap of things. What's the one? I normally use rule of three, right? So how do I narrow it down to the top three things? And so I normally will say, so what's the one that I have the most energy for now? And how do I match that? So that whole concept of ikigai that I'm sure you're familiar with, which is the Japanese idea of, what gives you energy? What are you good at? What does the world need? What can you make money from? And some people add the money piece. I always add the money piece. Let me be clear. I love money. And so I want to make sure that the ideas that I take forward, I have an intention behind them, right? So what is it that I want to contribute, or what is it? And the contribution piece might be a commercial contribution, right? So if I contribute this, what's the payback on it? What's the ROI? How am I going to charge for it? What's the business model that sits behind it? So, and then the next criteria for me, and I'm not really this rigid, to be clear, but the next criteria then for me would be around how does it fit with the other things that I do? Is there some way that I can connect them together so that, particularly if it's a business idea, so that I'm leveraging systems or processes or my resources that already exist. So I'm not adding layers of complexity. I love simplicity. And so one of my hashtags, and Cathey knows I love hashtags, one of my hashtags is simplify to amplify. So how do I make sure that I simplify it down so that it can have bigger impact? I love the whole concept of MILE, maximum impact, least effort. So I'm a hacker from way back. So how do I do this in easy ways that enable me to get the best, output from doing it? So I use a whole range of criteria. And as I said, I wouldn't say I was that rigid in going, does it meet this criteria? Does it meet this? It's like a pretty quick decision process. And then I iterate. So, when I came across design thinking about 10 years ago, I'm like, well, this is kind of naturally how I do things. And it helped me enormously. But what I actually prefer is service design or inclusive design, which actually is much broader than a linear process, and actually it's a constant, right? So it's coming back to this idea organism kind of idea that Cathey made reference to of, how do you, sense, so sensing being the key skill. And a lot of this comes actually from studies at MIT Presencing Institute that you might know. So how do you keep sensing and kind of picking up things, which would be data, right? Data pieces. And then how do you decide where to focus your energy? And for me, purpose and energy are really important. So the intention behind things. And so that is a moment of kind of pulling back and kind of looking at everything going, well, of all the things I could do, which ones normally, as opposed to one, but maybe three, do I want to move forward with? And then I go into the iterative process, which is iterative. I go and talk to people about it, is my version, right? So, hey, I thought of this. I noticed this. Here's what I'm thinking. How does that sound to you? And I do this with clients all the time. So before I even, typically, to be fair, as Cathey mentioned, I probably already have bought the URL if it's an idea that I really love. So I have about 300 to 350 URLs that I have on the go all the time. And some of them I don't renew, some of them I do, because I kind of go, I need to buy this, I need to buy this URL. And my challenge now in creating some new business options in Australia is I have to now buy the damn .com.au version in addition to the .com version. And I already buy the British spelling and the American spelling. So, I have to think about, this is why you end up with so many. So all of those things mean that then when you iterate, so I might have the domain name and I might change it or I might keep it. And then I go out and talk to people, right? How does this sound to you? That sounds great. Then I turn it into something tangible, normally a PDF, honestly, right? My background's in marketing and strategy. So pulling, Cathey and I have a lot of stuff in common around marketing being in our DNA, right? So it helps when you can visualize something, right? So, putting something into a pretty graph, deciding how to phrase it, giving some concepts around it. I normally aim for 1 page. So if I was to synthesize this down to, 1 page, what does that look like? How might I describe it? And that process, as you can imagine, of going from like, oh, I've noticed all of these things down to how do I, describe this really, really simply in 1 page means that you really need, for me, my process is I need to talk to a lot of people about it so that they ask me questions, which stimulates my thinking. So I'm a very extroverted thinker that way.
Oh my goodness. My mind has just exploded, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And I wrote down, you said, I have to think about it. And the first thought that came to my mind was, what have you not thought about?
A lot.
So true.
There's a lot of stuff I don't think about. I don't have enough time to think about everything, Marc.
But I got to tell you what's very fascinating already. And I think anybody who's watching really needs to sit down. Cathey and I are taking notes all the time. I think everybody who's watching needs to sit down and take some notes because you just ran a class 101.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Idea implementation. Idea implementation was like just 101. And something that Cathey and I have always had conversations with people about is sometimes there's a process that we go through that, yes, in a sense, it's not so rigid because it comes so natural. But there are people out there who are like, Virginia, how do you do it? And then you sit back and then you start going through your process. And what's natural for you then becomes a system for everybody else. And
totally.
And so
totally.
here's what I became curious about. This system from most energy to synthesize it to a 1-pager. You've got 1,000,001 ideas floating around in your head as we speak. I don't know about you, Cathey, but I'm curious. What are like 2 or 3 ideas that are fishing around your mind right now? And how might you use the process that you just outlined for us to pick the next one that's up for bat?
Ooh.
I love that. But before you answer, Virginia, I do want to say that I was being a good student. You know me, I'm always writing. Right?
You're amazing. Yeah.
And when my brain finally kicked in and said, oh, she's giving us a system. When my brain finally said, oh, system, I might've missed one. So catch me if I'm wrong here, but she talked about, contributing, having some kind of contribution, simplifying, iterating, and then being able to visualize it. And then even the iterating was this whole social science of like, hey, go out and do like some social proof on it, get some psychology behind it, get some, and so that whole thing, and I know I missed one. I feel like there was one in there, and, because there was the whole mile thing too, the maximum impact, least effort.
Yeah.
But Marc's right. Really quick, I know you're used to it because you're this close to what you do every day. But I just wanted to stop and I just wanted us to look at that beautiful thing and go, anybody listening right now just heard the inner workings of how you work, Virginia. So go ahead and answer, but I just wanted to call that out. That was a great system. Already got me to think about, like, in 1 second, I thought, well, if an idea comes up tomorrow, I already know how to quickly run it through a system for me. How would I
Wow,
iterate?
that's good. I didn't even realize I had a system as such, right?
Right?
Because it's so, to your point, Marc, it's like so ingrained.
It's ingrained.
Right? I literally just go, okay, this one, right? Or it's more likely not the one. You know, I also use rule of three a lot, to be fair. So of all the things I could do, let me narrow it down to three. Yeah. And because three is so much more manageable, it's memorable, and then I can kind of massage it to see, is there a way to combine them, or do I need to prioritize based on, you know, the energy contribution, you know, fitting into other things that I do, you know, the synergy piece as well. So, you know, that's also a part of it.
That was the one I missed. Was synergy. There was the how will this contribute, and then it was like the synergy, and then it was the simplify, so down to three or whatever, right? Or simplify it in one of two ways: either simplify a bunch of ideas or simplify this one idea, right? So that it kind of goes along with everything else you're doing. I love that. The iterate, you know, and then, you know, having this social, like how is this working with people? Like talk to people, and then creating something that you can say, here it is. Yeah. So boom, there's like Virginia's like masterclass on idea implementation.
I need to write this down, because now my team will actually get my team to watch this show later. Then they go, so that's how she thinks. Because we've been trying to work out. There
we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 5-part system.
5-part process.
Yeah.
There you go. Amazing. So, Marc, we're going to do the verbal Tai Chi and come back to your question, which I love doing always, verbal juggling, lots of different topics, and then we bring one in as our Tai Chi, and then we float it off to the next. For those who don't know, behind me, I'm in Hong Kong, which is why I look like this, right? Different to you guys in New York and Portland. So Tai Chi is a thing, right? Obviously, this morning there were lots of people out doing Tai Chi. So your question, remind me, maybe I can summarize it, but my memory, and you can, maybe I just ask you to ask it again, if you don't mind.
Well, after being amazed by the system that you then shared, I was curious to see it in action, right? Okay. So I'm curious, what are 2 or 3 ideas that are floating around in your head right now? Mm-hmm. And take us through this system that you just walked us through to pick the next idea that you could possibly be working on.
Oof. Okay, so here's an example. I mean, it's not the colored version because I carry it around in my bag, and I don't know how well you can see it, but it kind of gives you a sense of things, right? So this is my roadmap to 2025, because I need a plan. Right. And the plan doesn't have to be step-by-step linear plan. I just need to narrow things down a bit. So that's already narrowed down. So I've already done that whole process already. And so much so that I didn't want to narrow it too much, that I then added categories. So in my categories, I have like brain stimulating ideas, stuff that I'm going to spend my time on. I have things that I want to, so the brain stuff a lot is about work. The hand stuff is about making things. And for me during COVID, that's become really important. Being a strategist for, the last 13 years, it still feels really intangible very often. It's very abstract. And so I've really had this drive, in my energy, and my sensing has really gone towards tangible things. And so making stuff, so that's where the hand comes in. And then I have hearts and the contribution piece. So what are those things that I care about deeply, that I want to contribute to in the world generally? And then I have a last category, which is spirit. So what gives me joy? So what are those things that, uplift me, that give me, that preserve my energy, right, in many ways, so that I can do all of those other things, right? So that's how I categorized when that was already my synthesis as a process. So I just came up with this framework. Literally, it was my birthday. So one of the things that I do every day on my birthday is I do a reflection. So I'm not a New Year's resolution kind of person. I'm a milestone person. So I look at milestones that I achieve, and then I go, okay, so how do I celebrate what I've achieved, and elevate. So how do I take it to the next level? So it's not like I've done that, what's my next goal? It's like celebrate and then elevate. So another hashtag of mine. So the thing for me then on my birthday, it's really important to me that I celebrate the last, journey around the sun. And I also have the opportunity to think about how do I elevate my next year? What's the impact that in particular, because I normally talk about impact that I want to have. Now, this year was slightly different. I feel like with COVID, things are at warp speed, man. And so, it's like I feel like I've lived a dog's year in the past year, right? There's how the hell is it November? And at the same time, how is it still November? So it's this weird warped time frame. Like some moments feel like you're in slow-mo and other moments feel like you're in a time lapse. And so for me, it was like 1 year doesn't feel quite right this year for a change. So I'm going to change it up. And I went 2025. Don't ask me why. It's just a round number. 4 is a bad karma number in Asia. So I don't want to pick 4. So I'm going to go with 25. And so 2025 just felt right. So I went, okay, so what's my journey to 25? And then I came up with these categories to start with. And then I synthesized it down, right? Because I went, what do I care about? Overarching that is a hashtag. Surprise. And so my hashtag of this year of 2021 has been exploring possibilities. That's my hashtag. Everything I've been looking. So that's given me permission, Marc, in many ways, to not synthesize, to actually kind of go, I'm going wide. I'm going deep. I'm going to talk to lots of different people. I'm going to explore possibilities, stuff that I normally wouldn't give myself permission to do in many ways. Like how might I do it in another country? Right? How could I go and live in another country for part of the year and part of the year where I'm in Hong Kong? So really broad, really wide. And so then during the year, I've done so much sensing that I felt in August, which was my birthday, I could kind of go, you know what? I feel like I can start, bringing this kind of together. So I came up with my categories, came up with my hashtag to 25, which Cathey spotted a moment ago.
I did.
Do you remember what it was?
It was positive imprints.
Nice, exactly. So I used to say, yay! Look at that. So that's how hashtags work. She saw it once on a piece of paper and you remember them. That's why I love hashtags, right?
Yep.
It's not like a set of goals that you have to remember and you're kind of like, what did I say I was going to do? Whenever that milestone is. Some people it's New Year's. For me, it's my birthday. So positive imprints. And the imprint piece for me was so much more important because it's about leaving a lasting impact. So impact can be momentary, whereas an imprint it's like you've touched it and touched it lightly, to be clear. It's positive, right? It's not like that. It's not like I'm putting my stamp on the world. I'm not going to leave a dint in the universe. I'm not dominating the world. What I am doing is going, how do I contribute in a way that has a lasting positive flow to it? So that's my intention. So coming back to my criteria, right? Intentions. What gives me energy, and then how do I synthesize that down? So I still have, to be clear, at least 3 things in each one of those buckets. So I have a lot still on here. So maybe I can give you 3 different things. Maybe would that be helpful? And then we can kind of go from there. Sorry, long-winded answer to your question, but I want to kind of set the context. So under make, yes, Cathey.
Oh, I was going to say, just really quick, I want to play the role of Mrs. Obvious today. Okay. I'm going to just play that role. That's going to be my job today. Okay. Did we not just notice that even just to get to the ideas that Marc, that you asked her about, that she has a great idea, this idea of birthday reflection, of celebrate and elevate. We could have an entire conversation about that. This should be a TED Talk. I love the hashtag would be ditch the New Year's resolutions, right? Totally. It would be like, anyway, just wanted to call it.
Let's talk about that another time. That can be
100%. I just wanted to stop for a minute and say, that's a great idea. Go on.
Nice. Thank you. So, there's another side that sits to that before I dive in as well, which is my big 5 for life. So there's a book that I read back in early 2000s. Is that right? Is that how you say that? Yes. Yeah. So just after 9/11 kind of timing. And I was in Hong Kong already. I've been here for nearly 22 years, which kind of blows my mind. But I read this book on holidays. I was in Vietnam. It was pouring with rain. And so I read the entire book on this holiday because there wasn't much else to do, right? It was like torrential rain. So it's called The Big Five for Life. It's an American author, actually, John Strzelecki, who's a phenomenal author. And he wrote this parable about the impact that you have over your lifetime at work, right? It's a parable. It's a beautiful book. The concept behind it is Big Five for Life. And sorry, I'm going on another tangent. I'll tai chi back in a minute. So the Big Five for Life, is you come up with 5 core goals that at the end of your life, whenever that happens, right? So even though I'm going to live to over 100, because I have amazing genes in my family, I'm definitely living to over 100, no question. I've said that since I was a kid, before the science backed me up. However, 5 goals that when you pass, that you personally can say, I led a successful life. On my terms, right? So not about, do I have a car? Did I get married? Did I have kids? And for some people that might be really important, right? And that's okay. For me, it's much more about impact, right? Or was impact, now it's imprint. I've shifted it, right? That's the elevate part. And so I came up with these 5 and I review them as well because they can change, right? And I achieved one. So I've actually, elevated one of those already. So I came up because of the way that I am, I had to come up with an acronym to remember what my 5 goals were. So, and my acronym is INSPIRE. So now INSPIRE actually has more, obviously it has 7
more than
letters,
5,
right? Yeah, more than 5. So I actually use the NSPIR'd, right? And so each one of my goals starts with that letter, right? So, one of them is, I won't tell you all of them because that's not the point of the show, but N is to, to nurture my mind and body every day, right? So every day. And P is to personally contribute to strong female futures, right? They're broad, right? They're broad goals. And so how you do that is going to shift and change throughout your life. And that's okay, right? But I know that when I get to the end. So I also have these Big 5 for life, which is the overarching, contribution, energy piece, right? It needs to be aligned with what I want to achieve in my life. If it's not, why am I doing it?
I told you, Marc, like ideas just, they just swirl. They're just there. And
idea, yeah. It's like a swarm of insects that never goes away. You just want to swat them away sometimes.
I love your massage therapist, though. Like, I just need to shut it down for a minute.
Turn that brain off. So I'm going to so if I look at my journey, I'm literally looking at it in front of me right now. And I take one of the things I have a lot of energy around, as you probably gathered a moment ago, is about making something, right? Having something that is physical, right? And so sourdough is where I'm at with that. Like, I love sourdough bread, right? Baking, sourdough scones, sourdough scrolls. Like, I've come up with all of this whole range of sourdough products. And so this year I had the privilege to spend 5 months in my home country of Australia. I turned it a COVID refugee. Right. So because I went there with the plan to come back 2 months later, because I adore my family. And so I spend every Australian summer with them for Christmas. I kind of got stuck because Hong Kong took the quarantine up to 3 weeks hotel quarantine and crazy expensive crap. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I stayed in Australia a long time. So as a result, I could do many things that I don't normally get to do. So I went to a sourdough class to learn how to make sourdough bread. And my dear dad came with me, which I really loved. So he surprised me as that was my Christmas present, what I asked for, to be clear, because I'm pretty hard to buy for. And I said, it would be even better if you were coming with me. And he's like, oh, I don't know if I really want to do it. And then he surprised me on the day and came with me, which was really nice. So we did this sourdough class. No, it's like one of those, memorable moments, right? So the funniest thing now is that we're competitive on our sourdough baking, but actually all he focuses his time on is his mother culture, just feeding his culture like a pet, as opposed to using it to make things with, which is the whole point. So anyway, sourdough has become this like huge passion of mine. And so, I'm often whipping up something in the kitchen and then I'm coming out and doing a virtual class and, having a client conversation. And then I go back out and like shape the dough. And then I sit it back on the kitchen bench for another, 10 hours, because it normally takes about 36 hours to bake a loaf of bread, right? I mean, it's crazy town. So that's one of my ideas, right? Because what I love about sourdough is how flexible it is to be creative within a framework. The flavors, the shapes, the cutting styles, the formats. I mean, you can do so many things with one base ingredient. It's 5 ingredients. It's amazing. 5 base ingredients. And for me, you know, bread and bakeries are like the heart of a community. So, you know, having a bakery, offering bread, I mean, there's something very viscerally human about it. It's been in our, you know, it's been in our society, civilization for, you know, thousands of years in all different formats across all different cultures, right? It may not have looked like that, but there's a format that sits in. So so sourdough is one of my big shiny ideas, right? So that's one big balloon over here. And then I have another one here, which I'm gonna call Symphony by the Sea. This is a secret. Okay. I'm not going to tell you where because, you know, that will get released at some point. So one of the things that I love about living in Hong Kong is the accessibility. Everything is so close, right? It's easy. It's kind of like living in Manhattan and everything's like super close, although we have mountains and more space, obviously. And we also have water and, you know, fabulous food and all that kind of stuff. So we have in Hong Kong, we have a Philharmonic, Hong Kong Philharmonic, who are just phenomenal. They're world class. They're really amazing. And so I've had season tickets to the Philharmonic for years. And I really just discovered them through a friend who actually worked there in operations, said, hey, why don't you come to a concert years ago? And so I went and I just love it. I'm a kinesthetic person, as you can see. I cannot sit still. And so when I go to the Philharmonic, what I love about it is that you kind of move with the music. I mean, you're not dancing, clearly, but, you know, you see people moving. And I love that it gives permission. You can't make a sound because, you know, that would interrupt the music. You can move. And so I love live music. I've always loved live music. And so the Philharmonic for me is something that I will miss from Hong Kong. So when I'm looking to go to Australia and spend more time there, I was like, and the place that I'm looking to live is on the coast. Phenomenally picturesque, beautiful. It's Australia, right? I mean, white sand beaches, whales, wild dolphin pods, like pristine water, just gorgeous. They don't have a symphony. So I was sitting with a friend of mine in Hong Kong a few months ago having a high tea because I was investigating that because of sourdough. And she was like, what are the things, you know, when you leave Hong Kong, so sadly a lot of people are leaving, when you leave Hong Kong, what will you miss? And actually the thing that occurred to me, the first thing I said was symphony, which really surprised me, actually. So, you know, Symphony by the Sea is this concept. And so that's an idea, right? Basically a big outdoor nighttime Symphony by the Sea event. Second idea. We've got sourdough, Symphony by the Sea.
Yes.
I see an iteration going on here. An iteration and an alliteration. Awesome.
Can I find an S? Can I find an S, right? Oh. Can I find an S? That's a good point. You know what? I'm only going to give you 2 ideas. I'm going to break my rule.
I'm going to go with 4.
Because I feel like there might be enough in that already. Mm-hmm. Or do you need a third?
Marc? You're gonna go with 2.
No. Yeah, go with the 2. And now, how do you pick? Which is the one you go with?
Oh,
it must be so hard for somebody who gives birth to all of these different. It's like choosing a child, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, and you can have multiple favorites. You don't have to just have one child, right? Of course. You know, some countries stop you, others don't. And so you can have, you know, more than one. So interestingly, I mean, the sourdough piece, I mean, you probably sense, right, just in terms of the descriptor of it, right, that, you know, sourdough is a thing for me right now. And, you know, I've just started an IG account called Sourdough Sisters. And so, you know, my baking adventures, and which has got nothing on it, by the way. So it's not even live yet, so don't bother. But it's, you know, so these kind of things around how to, I guess, if I were to look at those, so let me step back, right? So we've just done here's what they are. Let me step back. All right. So let's talk about, if I start with my intention, positive imprints, well, both of them could, right? Because, if I look at the sourdough, I kind of go, well, for me, it's like you're giving a slice of joy. And I love that concept of slice of joy, right? You're giving a slice of joy in your daily environment to have something. Sourdough can do that. Symphony by the Sea is more like an annual event. The positive imprint around that could be to introduce the love of music into people's lives, right? And what I love about symphony is that we're playing music from hundreds of, decades and centuries ago. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it still resonates. So it's amazing that it's timeless, right? So many symphonic pieces are timeless. And so that concept of, for me, the positive imprint, if I think about symphony, it's a connector. It's a human connector. You feel that it's melodic, the way that you feel connected with the people, the community that you're with. I mean, that's what concerts do, right? It brings a whole heap of people together with a similar interest to focus on that moment of time. There's something special about it. So that also has a positive imprint. It could introduce, the love of music to a lot of people that perhaps, particularly in this region, don't get exposed to symphony at all. Mm. Right? Symphony, in many ways is being quite a snobbish kind of upper class type thing to engage in, if you think about it, right? Yeah. So even though, playing the piano and playing the violin in Hong Kong and many parts of Asia is kind of like a standard requirement of childhood. You have no choice. Yep. You have to play. My neighbors upstairs practice every day. They're not getting any better. They're just getting faster. They just play the same thing. Seriously, they're just playing faster and faster. I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, there's no joy coming from there. So, introducing the concept of joy without having to play an instrument. So if I would just look at that positive imprint side, they both could have. One would be annual, one could possibly be daily. Right, in terms of frequency of impact and imprints, right? But, a big annual event, there could be thousands of people, right, that could go. Yeah. And then I think about my energy, and my energy straight up goes straight to sourdough, winner hands down, right? Mm-hmm. Symphony, I love the idea, I love the concept. Do I need to do it now? Or could that be further out in my 2025, right? That's, because it is a 25 plan. So that definitely, sourdough gets a point on that scale. Okay. And then if I think about, does it connect to, other things that I do? Neither of them do, frankly. Mm. Neither of them do. They're completely disconnected. There are some things for me, because if you think about it, there's a lot of business skills that are required for those, right? Sourdough, you want to market it, you want to have a story, you obviously need operations, you need client development, you need systems and structures and all of that, which I can do with my eyes closed, right? So those things, I can definitely leverage the business that I run and take the skills, right? That's transferable. Likewise, symphony could be, I don't play an instrument anymore. I used to play the clarinet and piano as a kid, not particularly well, and still did. And
just faster.
Yeah, sorry.
I said just faster. You learned to play it faster.
No, actually, I never did. Okay. I didn't even improve on that basis. But also, I had one of those, piano teachers who would like slap the top of the piano to keep tempo, right, as opposed to the tick tock, the aggregator. So yeah. I was always a bit worried about where that hand was going to go if I missed something. So I never got any faster. My tempo was very impressive, right? Because I had this fear of this hand going. Exactly. Precisely. Marc, did you play an instrument as a kid? Or do you play an instrument?
No. I just played the radio, but I don't think that counts as playing an instrument.
Yeah, no. Well, it means you enjoy music. That's cool.
I was piano as well, Virginia.
Yeah, exactly. So it's quite nice, but it was just the same thing over and over. So anyway, coming back to our point, which was around how is it that we decide between this symphony and sourdough on the basis of synergizing, right? So how do we synergize it into what I do currently? So organizing a big event also is logistics and, contacts and being resourceful, which is one of my superpowers. Like, I am resourceful. If I want to do something, I'll find a way to do it. I'll find people who can show me, people who can share advice. I seek people's advice avidly who've done things before me. And so the symphony part, I already have been in contact with people who work at the symphony in different parts of Australia and said, do you think, would this actually be possible? And they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. So it's possible. But when I think about which part has more, I would say sourdough is more synergistic. Mm-hmm. Because as Cathey would appreciate, right? So the brand names, the marketing, the customer curation, the storytelling, all that kind of stuff, right? And I don't, to be clear, I don't have to be the person baking the bread. Mm-hmm. I don't aspire to be that person. I aspire, and I believe I am, the creator, the idea generator, the curator probably is a better word, of flavors and new product development, which will be done connected with the clients, right? So it's not like I'm going to sit in a laboratory at the back of a bakery and kind of come up with all these experiments.
Yeah.
It would be much more about, hey, I call all of my sourdoughs experiment. And I've been doing a summertime series of experiments of sourdough in Hong Kong because of the temperature is so hot here. So they proof really fast. So sourdough wins out, I would say, again, on the synergy piece.
Okay.
What's really cool about this whole, thank you so much, Virginia. What's really cool about hearing this, Marc, is we just literally walked everybody through. Well, Virginia did, but it's she took everything and just went, oh, if I went down this list and said, these are all the great things. And then this is a great thing. I love it. It's like symphony versus sourdough. Who would have known? Right? It's probably going to be the title of this show is symphony versus sourdough. Right. Love that you kind of gave us, we're already a behind the scenes, pull the curtain on ideas, but you even pulled it a little bit further back, which is I have all these ideas and it even went all the way back to your page, your roadmap to 2025, and all the different categories you had. And so I love that you kept drilling down, and what you ended up drilling down to were two very specific ideas. And then before you even got to the part of how does it tie to anything you do, my brain was already woo, I could see how you could tie it. And then you made the connection yourself. So I don't know. To me, she gave a visual through her words of how ideas are brought to life. And she really detailed it. She didn't just say oh, level 1, here's a really good idea. Let's make sourdough together and bring, mothers and fathers and then the rest of the world. She went boom, 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 boom,
I'm curious. Sorry, Marc. I'm curious to hear your perspectives of that thinking, because that's just the way I think, right? The way that I kind of go through that symphony, sourdough versus symphony kind of idea. So as I'm saying that, does that sound logical to you? What am I missing?
For me, it sounds very logical. And I just keep thinking of a checklist. I keep thinking of everybody who's out there who might be mulling around with a couple of different ideas. As an idea implementer, I mean, we can have 1,000,001 ideas, but you've got to pick one, right? You've got to pick one and go with it. And so many people struggle with that. And so that's why this so logically made sense to me, because as you were going between Sourdough Sisters and Symphony by the Sea, and then you started going through each part of your idea implementation checklist, I could start to see how you could get closer to this is the idea. And that's what everybody wants. Everybody just wants to have a system where they can just figure out, how do I pick one? And so, it made a lot of sense to me. And personally and professionally, it's helped me quite a bit.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah. So we definitely need to hit rewind on this whole conversation. Because if I took notes now, I'm going to take a whole lot more notes when I rewind and slow it down and get everything. You just dropped it, Virginia. You just dropped it.
Wow. It sounds like I need to watch it myself to work out what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, Marc, thank you. You eloquently explained that. And I think I don't think when we started this conversation, which is really cool. So that means this was an epiphany to us, is that we didn't know that we were going to get to a spot where she pitted two ideas and that she would run through them. But I'm really grateful that it ended up there, because she got down to she took us through this whole, like, there's a swarm of ideas. This is kind of a couple of things that I've done, the whole birthday idea, celebrate, then elevate. And then she had the big five, which is awesome. That came from that book. And then she kind of shared like two of those. And so you started to see the life inside the mind of Virginia of like, oh, there's ideas and ideas. But then if I just take two and I go, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. What are the pros and cons of each? I think ultimately we ended up in this spot where it's like, I could definitely rewind, like you said, and go back and go, that'll help me so much next time. And I think, Virginia, you said something too that I really want to call out. I think that's you said it twice now. And I think everybody should definitely hear this. You don't do anything just because you think it's a good idea.
No.
You said as part of the 5-part process, remember when she got to that part where she said, iterate. Why did she iterate? Because she was talking to people and testing it. But then what did she just say about the symphony? She's like, I don't know how to put together a symphony. I got to ask people that have done this before me and that have made it possible. So like, I just want to call that out as a genius too, is like, even though you're brilliant and you come up with these great ideas and you know how to market them and you know how to package them, so to speak, you're also smart enough to not try to figure things out that you shouldn't be figuring out. So.
Oh, absolutely. I have zero ego when it comes to thinking I have the best ideas or I know how to do something. Seriously, I don't. I have an idea. Doesn't mean it's the best idea. I have a way of doing it. Doesn't mean it's the only way of doing it. And so for me, it's about, absolutely, Cathey, and you know that. I mean, one of the things that we initially had a conversation about is because I'm in the process of writing a book, right? And you've written books. So I came to you and said, can you talk me through what advice do you have of being an author? And I've done this with several authors around the world, by the way. And I said to them, what was your process? How did you do it? What advice do you have as I'm starting out to get a book published? And so I aggregated that, and that's the journey I've been on, right? So talking to people, seeking advice is my number one thing. No question. Like, I have this idea. What do you think? And people go, well, that sucks. I can't see how that's going to work. I'm like, well, thank you for that perspective. Who else can I talk to, right? I don't just say, no, it's a great idea. You suck, as opposed to the idea sucks, right? So I don't do that. Thank you for your perspective, right? And it's data, right? It's input. And if you just ignore the people who are the naysayers, then you can't finesse it. It doesn't get better either. So you need to hear that. Even though it hurts sometimes, you're like, oh my God, my idea, I thought it was great. So balancing that out is important. Who do I go to? One of the things I'm looking at, if I were to do a bakery, a sourdough business somewhere, I actually created a advisory circle. I called it this, an advisory circle. And I actually went out to my friends and networks and clients and specifically curated this group of people together who are extremely diverse. Actually, Cathey, this is an idea that I had when we were on that island. I called it Dolphin Tank at the time, and damn URL was taken, so I didn't progress it.
I remember that.
Yes.
I totally remember that.
This is what I did. I actually did it. I'm like, wait a minute, I came up with this idea a long time ago. Where was I? Oh, I was on that island, Pankle Islands. So this is the thing. And that's the other. So this advisory circle has all of these different experts. I have a CFO, and they don't have to be, senior or whatever. They're really experienced. They have opinions. They have perspectives that I value enormously. And when you bring that together in a room, man, fireworks happens. And the iteration that I heard, it was so, I wish I had recorded it. It could totally be a reality show, because it's not like Dragon's Den or Shark's Tank where they like pull you down and tell you suck so that they can get a better equity share. I don't believe in that. I believe in dignity and respect and value and contribution. And so for me, all of those things were bringing these huge brains, like phenomenal experience, into a room over drinks and Thai dinner, to be clear, like nothing formal. And I sent them an investor deck, like literally, so like it was hardcore. Here's my investor deck. This is the plan. This is the model. This is how it works. These are the operations. This is what it'll be called. So I've literally done a whole business plan out of this sourdough idea, right? And, there's also the option of buying an existing business, starting a new one, right? Then there's like, how did the versions of implementation? So that's a whole nother field of work. So the advisory circle have just been phenomenal. They're like, when are we having our next meeting? They're on me, right? Have you thought about this? I saw this the other day. Here's an article that I think would be really helpful for you. So effectively, I created an informal board for a business that doesn't even exist, which is really cool, right? It's an idea. It's amazing.
And they're out there gathering stuff because that's now top of mind for them. And so they're like, oh yeah, I saw an article, or this is what I think, or I was in the shower. And this great idea came up.
So now they're sensing for me. Right?
Yeah.
How cool is that? Yeah. Right? So they're picking up all these different pieces as well. Have you thought, precisely. I just love it. So, that advisor, that dolphin tank idea that I had so long ago. So coming back to your point, Marc, well, I've narrowed that down, and thank you. You've actually helped me, because I really am in this process of having this Symphony by the Sea, sourdough kind of business, because they're both going to be very energy absorbing, right? Because I'm doing other things as well, right? I still have two existing businesses and 7 brands and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that I wanted to highlight from what you said, Marc, is that I'm going to take one thing forward as the new thing, and I'm still keeping all the other things still going. That's why the synergy part's important, because otherwise you'll get sucked into it and everything else can't continue. You have to, it's like you have one thing at the front that's taking your energy, but everything is behind it as you move forward, right? So you have this, it's like, there's got to be an interconnected web so that you can, that if one thing's moved, everything moves. If you go forward, everything goes forward. And so it means also that you can still put your ideas over here in a box. It doesn't mean they're bad ideas, and it doesing mean you won't come back to them at some time in the future. So one of the things that I really learned about interactive and universal design is you select one thing, it doesn't mean, or a group of things, up to 3 is normally my rule. And then, everything else, you just don't fall in love with those ones. So what are the ones you're falling in love with, right? Because the things that you love is where you're going to spend your time and energy and effort. And let me be clear, none of this is going to be easy. I know that. As an entrepreneur, we know the journey is not easy. It never is. And that's the fun. Right? It's how do you keep coming up with ways, being resourceful to keep going, right? What are the enablers versus the barriers? What are the enablers? What's going to help me to get forward, to step forward? Who are the people? Who are the places? Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to test first? What's a little piece I can take to market and sell? And if that works, or if it doesn't work, how do I shift it? So as Cathey knows, I do that all the time. I literally sell stuff on a 1 page. I haven't built the site, haven't even built the product. I don't even know how it's going to come together yet. And they'll go, yeah, we want to do it. We want to do it next week. I'm like, shit, now I have to build the damn thing. So then I literally pull together like a star team and go, right, people, we've got 24 hours. I did this literally last night. So this is why it's good to have people all over the world, because they work in different time zones. Yes.
Wow. You are the embodiment of 5 letters.
Ooh.
NPIR.
Thank you.
Inspiring. Absolutely. And I feel so blessed and so appreciative to be a part of this conversation. Speaking on behalf of Cathey, thank you so much. For
my pleasure.
All of these ideas, sharing your system, sharing your process. And I guess you've already shared how you talked about how the process has helped you. And by the way, I don't know how much we could take credit for the process helping you. I think we just had a conversation and you opened up the world to the process.
I didn't even know I had a process until you told me I had a process.
We witnessed it. Virginia, tell us, as we start to wrap, if anybody wants to find out about any of your ideas, or they want to pick your brain, or they want to celebrate and elevate.
Yeah.
They want to amplify.
If they want to go the mile.
Yes.
There you go. You got it all happening.
Yes. How can they find out more about you?
Good question. So I have a website, which is virginia.a.morris.com. Yeah, that's right, I think. Yes, because sadly there are 2 other famous Virginia Morrises in the world, so I had to have an A in the middle for my middle name. And LinkedIn actually is the best way to find me, because that's where I'm most active, as Cathey knows. I've been on Twitter and Facebook and lots of other, Snapchat and all kinds of other things, but frankly, and also on IG, right? So when I set up my Sourdough Sisters, if I take that forward, then please find me on IG, Instagram. So otherwise, LinkedIn truly is the best place.
Right. Well, everybody's heard it here. Everybody's heard it first, and everybody's definitely going to want to hear more from Virginia Morris. Absolutely. NSPIR.
Thank you. What a way to start my morning. Thank you.
And listen, for anybody who's watched today, who wants to learn more about Virginia, you already have figured it out and got that information. Anybody who wants to check out old episodes, future episodes now, if it's about to go down, you can go to It's About to Go Down show or go to our YouTube channel. And if you know anybody who's got ideas that they want to share, have them get in touch with us, or be the connector and get them in touch with us, because we love having these conversations and we love every opportunity we have where it's about to go down.